This month, the Volvo Ocean Race goes down to the wire. The Rolex Duralia goes all the way to Genoa, plus how to balance life on a board with a baby. But first, with sufficient combined sail area to cause a partial eclipse, the world's biggest and best arrived in Palma, Mallorca for the Superyacht Cup. The Superyacht Cup in Palma, Mallorca is big. Conservative estimates put the total value of this year's fleet at well over 500 million euros. It's the longest running event of its kind in Europe and draws the world's most experienced and accomplished crews. But above all else, it's spectacular in every sense.
Palma, what a fantastic place to sail. The sea breeze is pretty regular. The after parties and just the whole ambience really is paradise, and I live here.
Racing is at the heart of the three-day regatta, but this year there was a bonus. On the eve of the event, two J-class yachts, Svea and Valshida, went head-to-head. In a close first race, Svea took first blood, before Valshida fought back in race 2 to draw the match.
Valshida's the benchmark in the class, been in the class a long time. We're kind of the new kids on the block. We've been sailing the boat about a year now.
Boats are sailed at such a high standard, really. All the crews are good. The new boats do have a speed edge over us on the water and in rating. But if we have a race like we did this afternoon, where we pretty well get everything right, we can still win the odd race.
Next up, the full Superyacht fleet joined the action afloat, and there was plenty to watch. At 62 metres long, Athos is the world's largest privately owned two-masted schooner.
Athos has been on a world cruise and just come back from Southeast Asia, so this is their first regatta for must be 3 or 4 years, so there's some new faces, including myself at the back.
Bliss had also returned from a long cruise and was ready to race. But there were some who were new to competitive sailing.
The owner very much had in mind to go performance cruising rather than racing, but he's now decided to do a regatta. When we designed the boat, he had no intention of racing, but as time's gone on, he just thought, well, why don't we have a go? As a result, he has decided that he wants to buy a bigger spinnaker and put a bowsprit on the boat and get a bit more competitive.
Others came to Palma with a sharp focus on performance.
You know, you put a lot of effort into this, even though it's just 3 days of racing. There's a lot of preamble. Just to put one of these boats on the start line of a regatta like this takes a huge amount of effort, amount of training to get to it.
But local conditions still put pressure on even the best prepared crews.
It's just challenging and you've got to really think about it, but the conditions are always right around that sort of 12 to maybe 18 knot range. It's just got that unique sort of geography where the wind bends, and there's some sort of tactical positioning that you have to get right every time.
While the racing was important, for some the event was special in other ways.
Marisha 3 is one of the iconic super yachts, you know, and it sails beautifully and it feels good. And for a catch, it's beautifully balanced. This boat's very special to me. I mean, I was given the opportunity to skipper this boat when I was 26 years old, and that was in the Sydney Hobart. It's an amazing journey, and you know, we've got lots of guys on board that were there back when we launched the boat in '97. So it's very much part of the family. She's a dear old girl, 21st birthday this year, and so you know, to be in the hunt, even so many lovely new boats, it's amazing.
By the final day, racing had gone down to the wire in Class A, with all 3 boats tied on equal points. And after a closely fought race that saw all 3 scrap for the podium, it was win-win that won.
We're really stoked with the result. We had a great day on the water, a little bit better than we hoped for actually. It was extremely close. We pulled off a really, really competitive race.
But when it came to the overall trophy, victory went to the oldest and arguably most famous boat in the fleet. In the final race, the J-class Valshida had beaten Maréchal 3 to the podium in this hotly contested class.
The fact that we're in on Class B was almost a surprise. You know, we came here to match race Svea. That was the competition, and that was the goal, to come here and press hard on another J boat. But to then be able to be in the mix with the guys in Class B, the faster boats, and these courses are set up for those guys. You know, we're not really reachy boats like them. To be able to hold our own with those guys was absolutely delightful, and then to see how the rest of the fleet came in and put us on top overall is absolutely amazing, really.
Renowned for its great conditions, along with its natural amphitheatre, Cascais, Portugal turned it on for Act 4 of the Extreme Sailing Series. While the racing was close and the pace relentless, there was one team that dominated the 4-day event: Arnaud Sarafagis, Team Alinghi. Despite some big puffs and shifts, along with the odd scary moment, the Swiss team stayed ahead of their competitors on the scoreboard throughout the 28-race regatta. Having carried their success through to the end, their skipper was clearly pleased.
We managed to sail really well, won the 2 first races, and then we had a little fight with the whole fleet, so it was a little bit harder, but we just relaxed, and the last race the wind picked up and we were fast, so it was really good, and we're really happy to win here in Cascais.
SAP Extreme Sailing Team had put up a good fight to finish second overall, but this time at least they'd been no match for Alinghi. Behind them, the Ineos Rebels were stirring things up as they muscled past Oman Air to climb onto the podium for the first time this year. Next stop for the Extremes is Cardiff. The waiting was over for the 17 skippers as they set off on the Golden Globe Race, a solo non-stop race around the world from Les Sables d'Olonne on the west coast of France. Inspired by the race of the same name 50 years ago, skippers will be relying on the same navigational devices as were available at the time. Their trip is expected to take around 250 days.
In the chase for overall victory, Brunel's newfound performance, Dongfeng's predicted bonus point, and Mapfre's drop in pace had all added up to one thing. After 43,000 miles, 3 boats were on equal points, with just 1 leg to go to the finish. The Volvo Ocean Race had never been closer. After 8 months of racing, victory would come down to a 970-mile coastal sprint.
It's an incredible situation for the race, because I think these 3 teams have done a fantastic job and give a fantastic fight on the water.
I think that's something what we know, that especially one particular red boat, they're getting very nervous.
So I'm very happy to be part of one of the 3. It would be very hard for me if we were out of the fight. So happy from there.
The final leg took the fleet from Gothenburg to The Hague in the Netherlands via several turning points along the way. After a tricky start, the first 12 hours presented several passing lanes as the fleet sailed upwind towards the Norwegian coast. Dongfeng rounded the mark at the head of the fleet, followed by Mapfre, who, after starting in last place, had hauled themselves through the fleet. The next mark of the course took the fleet south to the Danish city of Aarhus. In front of thousands of spectators, Dongfeng rounded this turning point ahead of Mapfre, but this time by just minutes. As the fleet headed back to the north, light and shifty conditions slowed the pace and piled on yet more pressure before stronger winds filled in. The route headed south once again, but this time teams had to negotiate the maze of shipping exclusion zones to get to the finish at The Hague. Among the many tactical decisions ahead, there was one key issue to consider: whether to go to the west or the east of the zones. There was no middle ground. With less than 400 miles to run, the fleet split into 2 groups. To the west, Mapfre led the charge, while Dongfeng kept close to the coast.
We've chosen a path inshore, so it's a lot of very tricky navigation. We've got all sorts of sandbanks and traffic separation schemes and some very changeable weather. So I suspect no one's going to get any rest tonight. It's going to be a very busy night, changing sails and just navigating our way through it all.
It didn't take long before Dongfeng's gamble looked risky as the rankings dropped them towards the back of the fleet. After 12 hours, they were almost 50 miles behind their arch rivals Brunel and Mapfre.
That is a bit crazy. We are sailing than 9 months, racing than 9 months, and it's only the 40 last miles of the last leg is going to decide who is going to win the Volvo Ocean race. It's crazy.
But as the breeze died offshore, Dongfeng hauled themselves back into the race and into the lead. By the final turning mark, just 5 miles from the finish, Caudrelier's team were back on top. And this time, nothing would stop them winning.
First time I cry for a race, I think. I've been crying a lot since the finishing line, and it's the first time of my life I cry for that. I'm so sad for the other one. I'm so sad for Shabi because it's a good friend, and I know how much it costs to do this race to a skipper. And this is I think about him, and also about Bo, who did a fantastic comeback, and yeah, but this is the race.
We went the wrong way. Very simple. Dongfeng went the right way, but we actually expected that Mapfre would go that way as well. But then they choose our way. It wasn't until 20 miles before the finish that we knew most likely we're not gonna beat Dongfeng. Did it, and they won the race. So congratulations to them.
By the finish, Team Axo Nobel had slipped into second, leaving Mapfre in third, resulting in a second place in the overall standings. Baubecking and Team Brunel were fourth into The Hague to grab the final podium place on the overall race leaderboard. So after 45,000 miles, the 13th edition of the famous ocean race had been decided in the last 5 miles. Outright victory had gone to the team that had only won one of the 11 offshore legs, but in the end, it was the one that counted.
To win the ocean race is something I couldn't imagine, but the pressure, I have less pressure on this leg than the other one. We were relaxed, we show it at the beginning, and for the first time we follow our first choice and we win.
Coming up next, round 2 of the 52 Super Series turns the form book on its head. Welcome back. Still to come, how one sailor is balancing her life on a board with her responsibilities ashore. But first, round 2 of the 52 Super Series saw the form guide reordered at the second Croatian event in Zadar. The 52 Super Series is not the place for an easy win. In this class, everyone thinks they can have a shot at the silverware, and there's plenty of evidence to suggest that they can. In the second event in Zadar, Croatia, of the 8 races, 6 different teams took wins. Even finishing in the front half of the fleet was hard. Throughout the event, every team had a shocker at some stage. Following a disappointing opening event 4 weeks previously, Luna Rossa won the opening race and took a second in the next. Day 2 was a perfect example as a newcomer to the class took the first win of the day. Tina Plattner helming Phoenix turned heads with an impressive performance, before driving the point home with another win on day 4. And when it came to repeat performances, Sled took the coastal race once again, having won this race in Sibinic a month earlier.
We feel it's a one design class now. All of the boats are so similar
that it's whoever does the basics well, you know, good start and keeping out of trouble.
But some of the former top dogs were finding life especially tough, as Quantum and Azura failed to find the form that has frequently made them the favourites. Thunderstorms prevented any racing on day 3, but by the time the fleet were back out on the racecourse, the pack was being shuffled once again. But what teams didn't know at the time was that windless conditions for the final day would make the penultimate day's racing decisive in Zadar. Tina Plattner's team had thrust itself to the top of the leaderboard, but a last place in the penultimate race dropped them from the top spot with 1 race to go, before bouncing back with a 3rd in the final race. Here, Allegre found some late form to take their 2nd win of the series. But it was Luna Ross's 5th place that was to secure the overall win.
I'm a lucky guy. I mean, I have Bruni as a driver, I have James Kittel as strategist. So I have Pietro Sibello on the main sheet. I mean, I'm a lucky guy. I'm very lucky to have these kind of guys so close to me.
Nevertheless, while the Italians took the big prize, there'd been one debut performance that had stood out above all.
Definitely way beyond expectations. It's been good. It's been good fun. It's a really awesome fleet to sail in. We tried to really start every race from scratch again and say, you know what, it doesn't matter where we came in the last race. This is a new start and let's go and try our best again. So it's been an awesome experience.
Next stop is Cascais, Portugal, for the TP52 World Championships. And the World Sailing Show will be there. Aarhus, Denmark. The clock is counting down to the Hempel Sailing World Championships in August. 1,000 boats, 1,500 sailors, 90 nations, 40 Olympic medalists and 2 weeks of racing. Some have already tasted success and are addicted to winning, even when their lives have changed tack. 2016 marked a new peak in Charline Picon's career. A former world champion and 3-time European champion, success in Rio delivered an Olympic title too. Yet Picon isn't ready to stop, even though to carry on means balancing a demanding schedule with a new family life.
Pour moi, cette Olympiade est différente parce
For me, it's a different Olympic cycle because I had a baby 9 months ago. So this year it'll be hard to go for the highest spot on the podium, but I'll do everything to train the best I can and to show that people can have confidence in me in Tokyo 2020. The comeback is definitely hard after a baby. I tried to really take advantage of no exercise in the first months. First I started with physical training and running. It was difficult. I had to stop a lot and walk. Then I had to build up muscle again because I hadn't worked out in a year, and that was pretty difficult. I had to depend a lot on my family. My parents are with me at the World Cup in Hyeir to take care of the baby, because when you do a competition or train, it's 1, 2, 3 weeks in some cases. And for a mum with her first baby, it's a little hard to leave the baby for that long, and for me to still feel good as an athlete. The day starts early, at 7:30 a.m. I have to get her ready, then drop her off at the nanny. Then I can concentrate on my training or physical training, which is generally in the morning. Muscle training or aerobics, everything that's cardio. Then it's lunchtime and a little nap because I have to sleep, and then out on the water. It goes really quickly, and at 6 o'clock I have to go and pick her up. The really big difference is once training is done, that's when my second career starts as a mum. So from 6 p.m. I had to be on non-stop until 9 p.m, which is her bedtime. As for me, my husband works a lot. He comes home around 8:30 p.m, so he can't help me much. So the days are definitely 7:30 a.m. till 9 p.m. That's quite a lot. So at 9:30 I go to bed.
Live racing coverage starts on the 2nd of August, and the World Sailing Show will be there. Saint-Tropez is a special venue that always pulls a crowd. From flat-out carbon racers and Grand Prix Supermaxis to classics and everything in between. The annual Rolex Giralia Regatta is as much about spectacle as it is about racing. After a 3-day series of inshore courses, the 240 nautical mile finale heads offshore from this ancient town. Once around the Giralia Rock on the northern Corsican coast, the fleet heads to the finish in Genoa.
2, 1, stop!
This is a race well known for its extremes. When the Mistral blows, conditions can be brutal. The alternative is super light winds. There's rarely anything in between. Anticipating what will prevail is one of the keys to success.
It will be a light air race once again. We are prepared for a long race. It's always hard to say when it's so light, the forecast, if you park at night or in the early morning, or you keep going smoothly forward. So I think we will need at least one day and a few hours. So if we are lucky, we're still arriving in Genoa at daylight, and that's what we're prepared for.
But others were less certain about the forecast.
It's changing very quickly. These last days, the weather and the wind was changing so quickly. 4 days ago, we were supposed to do all the race in 14 hours, and now it's more 24 hours. Yesterday was 32, 33 hours, so changing a lot and quickly.
As the 200-boat fleet set out, it was the Maxis that slipped ahead in the light breeze. And among them, it was the 3 100-foot Wallicentos that were the first to round the rock at 3 a.m. And as they battled between themselves on the leg to Genoa, it was Tango that took line honours. Followed closely by Galatea, who finished 9 minutes behind, with Magic Carpet Cubed crossing the line in third. The focus then shifted to who would take the overall prize on corrected time. Lightening winds made it difficult for the smaller boats, as the larger boats were finished and the clock was counting down. And when time was up, it was last year's Line Honours winner, Momo, a Maxi 72, that took the overall trophy for corrected time. Next month, the World Sailing Show is at the heart of the action at the Sailing World Championships in Aarhus.